Hello YouTube. Here in Colorado, it's about end of August, first part of September. It ain't cold yet, but winter will be coming here pretty quick. And last year, when we were burning with the pellet stove, what we noticed is things weren't burning clean. So I'll show you. We have a Englander pellet stove here, and you can see we generally sit here and in the wintertime, you'll put our coffee on the stove, keeps it nice and warm. Have a few things here, set a reading book. Got your standard fireplace implements, even though it's a pellet stove. But what you can see is the front window is all blackened up. And by the end of last season, pellets just weren't burning clean. And we were getting a lot of soot on the windows. So I think it's time to do a service for this stove. So what you can see, let me open it up. Obviously there's the soot on the windows. I mean, it's just really bad on the window. What you can also see, or maybe you can't, let me get a light. I'll be right back. Okay, I grabbed a flashlight, but something else you can see is, the pellets just aren't burning. You can see the little black, instead of being ash, we're getting partially burned pellets. Getting a lot of buildup inside the stove. So clearly, we're not getting good air draw anymore. It's burned clean before, and I don't think it's the pellets. I think what the problem is we're just not getting good air up into the burn area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it apart and give it a thorough cleaning inside and out. So what I'll do is I need to get around behind it to get at all the fans and blowers and all those pieces. And so it's just sitting here on this pedestal. And what I want to do is, you can see to get back behind it, I'll move some things out of the way here and give you a better picture. But there's just not a lot of room to get back there and work. So I'm actually going to disconnect the stovepipe, because I gotta brush out the stovepipe before winter too. So I'll disconnect it from the stovepipe, pull it out, rotate the whole thing. Of course, unplug it from the wall, but pull the stove out, rotate it, and we'll do a thorough cleaning of it. Okay, it looks like this is a model 25-PFS. I don't know if you can see that, but it was manufactured in 1991. So this looks like actually 11 of 91. And this is 9 of 17, so 11, so 26 years old. So this stove is about 26 years old. I don't even know if they make it anymore, but we're going to get it torn apart and get it cleaned up. Step one when doing any work on these stoves is get yourself some plastic gloves, rubber gloves. I use these blue nitro. They seem to hold it better. I use them when I'm working on the car. Okay, so I got everything cleaned up around the stove. One of the first things I want to do is remove the stovepipe. Before I do this, what you notice is I put marks on here so I can get everything lined back up when I'm done. So take all the joints, put a mark on them, so that when I twist this to make a little bit of room and remove the stovepipe, be able to put it back where it belongs. Okay, so we got the upper pipe off, but in doing so, we scattered ash and soot everywhere. So one of the first things is try to keep a clean workspace, because you start tracking this all over your house and it's just terrible to keep clean. So I'm going to do a little vacuuming, and another recommendation is this is my old vacuum. It's not the one I normally use for the house. This one I use just for cleaning up the stove and stuff, because once you start getting soot inside your vacuum, you never get it out. So probably the next step I'll do is clean out this ash area. On this Englander stove, there's a top plate in the burn box. Well, of course you got this bottom plate, Let's get that out and get it cleaned up. Got these two side plates will come out, and then there's a top plate that needs to come out too. And this whole area in the past has been, little bits of ash drift up, so it burns down here in the burn box, and then the air goes up past. There's some tubes in here. I'll show you when these plates are off. And then these tubes have air flowing through them, and they come out these side grills over here. This is where the warm air comes out from a blower fan over here and at the top. So it's got these tubes in here that the flames flow past to heat the air that blows into the room. So got to tear all this out and get it cleaned up. Okay, like I said, you're going to want gloves for this. So I think the first step is to, see if I remember the order right on this. Oh man, what a mess. I think this is the top. Okay. Comes out first. This top plate. That's clearly a mess. I'll have to take that out and get it cleaned up. Then these side plates just have a hook on them. There's a ton of ash up in there. So no wonder it wasn't burning well last year. So you can see they've just got a hook, and they just hook over those heat tubes. So there's one on each side in this version of the stove. And this is an older stove, so it's pretty nice. It's made of pretty heavy gauge steel. Nice and thick. I don't know what the new stoves are made of. We looked at some once a while ago and looked like a lot of sheet metal and not nearly as heavy. But now you can see these heat pipes in here. The flame goes out under and goes right out through the top. And you can see that's why you want these gloves. Because what a mess. And then this goes right up, straight up to the smokestack once you get that top plate out. So it's nice and clean there. So the next step is going to be to clean all this out, and usually I scoop most of it out first with a cup. Of course, let everything get cool. Then I scoop the bulk of it out with a cup, and then I'll come back and vacuum it out. And this is sort of my typical clean. This year, I'm actually going to spin it around and clean the back because I poked my head in behind it, and it's plumb full of dust bunnies, and the fans are getting choked up. So, like I said, it wasn't drawn well when we were using it last year. So this year is going to be a more in-depth clean. Okay, so time to clean it out. Like I said, I just use a metal cup, and I get in there and I scoop out all the clinkers and coals and ash and unburnt pellets. Okay, something else. Don't know how close you'll be able to see this, but you can see there's really hard buildup down there around the auger outlet in the burn box. So for that, I generally have to take an awl, or something heavy, a small chisel, and just really, break that stuff loose. So. Okay, so I had to go get a hammer and a chisel. Now you don't need anything quite this big, but it's what I've got. And so I got a situation where this has built up in there so hard, I'm gonna have to beat it out. Before I do that, I think I need to move the lights some. Okay, I got everything put back together and did a little more cleanup, put in a bag in the vacuum. And now I'm gonna turn the stove around. All right, the first step, like every first step, is get the vacuum and clean it up. Now you can see that I've got this unplugged. So what's plugged into the wall is the lights. And this is a 110 stove, so we want to make sure it's unplugged from the wall before we go working around inside of it. All right, first things first, get the vacuum, clean up all these dead pellets. Okay, I tried to turn the lights, move the lights a little bit lower, and then I'll try not to shadow them, and we'll get under here and take a look and see if we can identify the various pieces. So, let's see. I'm guessing these two have got to be the auger motors, so, looking at it,
This is going to be the main auger into the firebox here. And this here should be the auger that feeds down into the main auger. Oh man, there's still a lot of pellets littered up in there. I'll have to clean up. And then, let's see, I'm guessing this is a blower for the heat transfer tubes. Right here's my guess. And looking at the other side, just look at the shape of these two blowers and where the tubes go. I'm guessing that they're your main, blower speeds. Because if you look on the controller, there's a heat range and a blower control. And so I'm guessing that these two are the blower. And looking at them, let's see, they kind of go up to the same place on the control board, pretty similar. But so it looks like we got 110 coming in. And then we got a set of wires that go over to this motor right here, which looks like it might have been replaced sometime in the past. Just looking at the wiring, looks like maybe it's been updated. And then this blower looks different than everything else is black, and that one's gray. So I'm guessing that actually is the firebox blower. And then we got the two motors here and here and here. So whoa, there's a lot of dirt down here too. I'm gonna have to clean this whole thing again, but I'm guessing this here's the firebox blower. And just looking at it, it doesn't mesh up 100%. I'm betting that's a refurb somewhere in its last 25 years of life. So I'm kind of inclined to take that off and see if there's a way to access that ash trap and get the rest of those, see if there's any ashes between that blower and the firebox.
Okay, since I decided to take this firebox blower motor off, figured while I was in there I might as well take these two side blower motors off too and get those where I could get them cleaned up. And then let's see if we can get back in there and I can show you a little bit more about what I'm seeing. So a couple things that are kind of interesting. So first off, here it is, back up in there. But something maybe you can see is on the side of these augers is a grease zerk and a big old bearing block and a grease zerk on both those. The other piece is these motors, I've just noticed they're just flopping there. They're just sitting, basically they're bolted to the shaft of the auger, and then they just flop around on a little brace. So I'm going to get a wrench and take those off there so I can blow them clean and get those motors completely clean. So I'll go out and get a wrench and see if I can take those auger motors off. Okay, so I've taken all the electronics out. I unscrewed the panel from right here, and you can see it here on the floor. So I'll take all this out and hit it with shop air. We're taking that panel out. Didn't have to disconnect everything yet. I may do that, but I was able to get the auger motors out, get the fans and blowers, all those pieces out. So like I said, I can gather all this up, take it outside, hit it with shop air, and really get it clean. And you can see that this green motor, this firebox motor, it's clearly a refurb, because you can see where they've taken and cut it with a with a saw to make it fit. But now maybe you can see up in there, you can see the hole to the firebox. So now what I'm hoping is I can get up in there and get a better look at that. But if you can see that there looks like the entrance to the firebox. And if I can get up in there, maybe I can clean out any ash that's up in there. Otherwise, it's not clear how else I would get up to that firebox. So anyhow, I'm going to take all these pieces outside, get them blown off, and see where we stand with them. Okay, we got outside to blow everything off. I had it out here. I've got the shop air hooked up, and I was giving everything a good blowing off. And I noticed something is that this firebox motor, the fan inside of it is jammed up and doesn't even want to turn. I don't know if you can see up in there at all, but went there and tried to hit it with shop air, and the fan should have blown and spun freely, and it's pretty much
stuck. So anyhow, I don't know if that's, and it's clear that they've replaced this thing once before, whoever had it before me, and I don't know if it's just so close to the firebox that it gets hot and tends to kill it, you know, because it's just a metal to metal contact right to the motor. So maybe there was supposed to be an insulating ring in there. Anyhow, it looks like I'm going to tear this down, so I'm going to clean up the rest of it and then tear this motor apart and see where it stands. But that may be the reason that I wasn't getting good airs. Maybe this motor wasn't even turning at all, because I go to push with my finger and I can actually move it, but it's pretty jammed up. So anyhow, I'm going to put this away and clean up the rest of it and see where we stand. Now that I've got this motor controller off, I don't know if you can see this, but here on the side of the controller, there's listed from top to bottom, common, FD, well maybe it's just, I assume it's C for common, so it goes C, FD, C, UA, C, LA, C, RA1, C, RA2, C, line. So I'm guessing it's the black, you can see the black line coming in, so that's the hot on line. C is the common, so neutral. Then RA1 and RA2, those were the blower fans for the heat, you know, for the two blowers, left and right. So I don't know why they call them RA1 and RA2, but those were the blower fans. Then the next one was a auger motor, and it's LA, so I'm assuming that's the lower auger. Then a UA, the upper auger, and then the FD and C. So common and FD, that was the firebox fan. Firebox blower was the CFD. CUA should have been the upper auger. CLA should have been the lower auger. Then CRA1 would be one of the blower fans. CRA2 would be the other blower fan. And then C and line would be the main power coming in. Okay, so we talked a little while ago about these grease zerks right here and right here on these bearing blocks. So like I said, I would doubt that a more modern one would have these, but if they do, what you want to do is get a grease gun and put a little bit of grease in these bearing blocks while you got everything torn apart now. Grease guns come in a variety of different shapes and sizes, but that's the one that I have that's a small one, so I'm going to get under there and put a little grease in there. Okay, I don't know if you can see from that angle, but what I'm going to do is put this grease gun on the zerk. Should fit up on there and seal, and then you just pump it, and it should be pumping grease into the bearing. All right, when we left off last time, I had basically found one of these zerks that was bad, these grease fittings, and you know, I was surprised I couldn't get grease through it, but not something I'm used to. So you know, I went down to the auto parts store and picked up a package of grease fitting zerks, and it was about $4.50 for 8 of them, so they're about 50 cents a piece. So I've already taken one out and I tested it, took the grease gun and put it on there and made sure I could push grease through it, made sure it was good. So we'll go ahead and replace that on that other bearing. Okay, well, I think I know why I wasn't getting airflow to my burn box. Is the blower fan motor for the burn box was pretty much locked up. I should be able to just spin this freely, and it's not. This was the motor for the blower fan. So I'm probably going to end up needing to get a new one of these. All the other pieces I was able to tear apart and get pretty clean, so that went well, but this looks like this is dead, so I'll have to run to town and source a new one of these. But at least now I probably understand why it wasn't working. So I had pointed out that on this fireplace, really the problem that I was trying to solve was we weren't getting enough combustion air. And so this was the fan that was under there, the combustion air fan that was under here, and it was just mounted in here like this, and it had this fan above it. And the problem was is this fan motor was just completely frozen up. It was just a standard, squirrel cage fan. This fan was mounted on here, and it was in here, and it would just spin and blow air. And you can see it's pretty dirty, and just from being in there for all the years. But when I first pulled this out of here, this wouldn't even turn. It was just completely frozen up. So I did actually take it apart and polish it up, and got it spinning again. And I wired it up, and it would run. The problem is the bearings are just a little bit shot. I don't know if you can see that. There's quite a bit of wobble in there. That bearing's basically shot. So I could have put this back into service, I think, because I took it apart, polished it up, but the bearing packing in there is just completely worn out. So I wanted to replace it. Now, unfortunately, this is probably not the original. Well, I mean, it's clearly not the original motor that went with this fireplace. Now, but I don't know what to replace it with. So far, I haven't been able to find the correct specs for this fireplace. How much? Basically, what I want to know is how many CFM. Ideally, I want to know how many CFM, what pressure do I want to pressurize the firebox to, and how many cubic feet per minute of air should go in there. Since I didn't have that, what I did was looked around to find a motor that was very similar. So this motor, has the specs on the side of the motor. 3,000 RPM, 100th of a horsepower, one phase, 60 hertz, half amp, 115 volt. A.O. Smith motor. So what I tried to do was just find a motor blower combination that was very similar to this one, so that I could replace this basically worn out one. Just take this basically worn out motor and replace it. So what I did was just went on to Amazon and basically found a motor blower combination that was pretty much identical. So this was the blower housing. So as you can see, it's almost identical to the blower housing. Looks like it's 180 degrees out of phase. Looks like the holes on one side versus the other side versus the intake. So very similar. Does have a different mounting bolt pattern. This one does have a 3-hole, and that is what's on the side of the firebox is 3 holes. So I am going to have to modify this and move the screw holes to have this one adapt up to it. But similar fan. And then the motor, I found one with a motor with similar specs. So 3,000 RPM, 60 hertz, 115 volt. This one is 0.8 amps, and it's a 60th of a horsepower. So it does pull a little more, but there is a high and a low speed on this motor. So what I'll do is I'll take the low speed, the lower power setting, and attach it, because it does appear to be a higher throughput fan and a higher power fan. So what I'll do is I'll use the low speed setting, and then I'll wire up to the low speed leads. You can see there's a set of ground leads, a return lead, and then these 2 different hot leads for a high and low speed. So depending on which of those 2 is wired up, the controller, so the stove has a controller for heat range, and as part of the heat range, it controls the auger, how much pellets it's going to feed, and it controls the combustion air speed. So I'll just hook it up to the low setting, and that should be more in line with the setting, the capabilities of the previous fan. So as I mentioned, I got this new motor. This motor is rated at 0.8 amp. But it is a 2-speed motor. There's a return and a high speed and a low speed. So not only is this the high speed and the low speed, but it obviously it'll draw a different amount of current spinning the fan at a different speed. So I used a voltmeter, put it on AC amperage, put it over here in a 10 amp versus a 300 milliamp for this meter, and measured the amount of current draw when running each of these leads. So I hooked up the hot to the blue or the red, and then the return I measured the current in the return line with this ammeter. And when running the blue line, the high speed line, it pulls
800 milliamps, 0.8 amps, and when hooked up to the low speed line, it pulls about 510 milliamps, so 0.51 milliamps, so pretty close to the previous motor, which was 0.55 constant speed, single speed, the single speed 0.55 amp previous motor. So this will be pretty similar to the previous motor. Still don't know if it's the correct motor for this stove, but it obviously was working when we bought the house, and the 0.55 fan motor that was under there, I mean, it burned out eventually, but it worked for a lot of years. So we'll see how many years this one lasts for. But I'm going to wire it up to the low speed half amp, and I'll cap off the high speed 0.8 amp, and then I'll have the return line, and I'll hook that up to the speed controller for the stove. Okay, I had to go out and do a little bit of adapter work. The old fan that was on there had 3 holes spaced equidistant around the air inlet hole, but this new blower that I bought had 4 holes in it, 4 main holes, and so of course it didn't mate up to the 3 holes that are in there. So I had to do a little bit of adapting work. So I took a piece of paper and fit it over just laid it over the hole that was in there, just slid up in there and laid it over the air inlet hole, and then just rubbed it with a pencil to kind of find where and it'll leave a mark where the screw holes were. Then I was able to take that, lay it on top here, and kind of line it up. And from there, I could figure out where to drill an additional hole. Well, it turned out that these holes are big enough that it could line up to 2 of the 3 holes. Then I just had to put in a 3rd hole over here, so I could line up 2 of the holes there, and then put in a 3rd hole over here for the 3rd screw. So I'm going to mount the fan like this, and the holes that would line up. So I'm going to mount it like this. The motor will be right here, and like I said, just had to go out and drill a hole in it and adapt it so I could screw it on there. So, okay, I'm going to start putting the pieces back together. So the first thing I'm going to put in is this blower, because it goes up in here kind of tucked in the back. Then I'll put the recirculation air blowers. They hang off the bottom. Then I'll put the auger motors on, so kind of build from the from the most inside outward. So this is going to be the hardest to get to and get up around behind it to put the screws in. So I'll go ahead and put this one in first. Nice and tight. All right, that's in there solid as a rock. All right, got the combustion air blower on there. I'll pull in a little bit, maybe you can see it a little better. So there it is. Got it mounted to the side of the firebox. All right, and we'll put the down here is where the convection air, the room heating air, is going to go. So we'll mount those up next. And there was a piece of insulating braid that tucks up in the front, up near the firebox, because the front part of where these fans mount is actually the firebox, and then the back side is where the air channel is. So if you look at these things, this front part goes up right next to the firebox, and there was a piece of insulating braid tucked in there on both of them. And so I'll replace that, and then the fan will go up in there. All right, there's the 2 blower fans, convection fans they're called. Got those mounted in there now. Next step is to mount the auger motors. Then we'll grab the auger motors. Again, here they are. They got a gearbox, so the motor spins. And these motors, they are starting to sound a little bit sketchy, so we'll see if there's going to be a problem with those over time. But they look like they're pretty readily available on the internet. But you've got a motor that spins right here with a fan, and a motor right here, a fan to help cool it. Then you got a gearbox that really gears down this motor down to the auger speed. So you notice you got a flat. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a flat on the side of this shaft. You want to slide that in there such that the bolt, this bolt right here, locking bolt, goes down against that shaft. So
pellets moving in there. Okay, that's the auger motors. Got the two convection blowers on, the two auger motors, and now we'll put on the combustion fan. Okay, so before I mount the combustion fan, it goes up in back there, it'll just slide in like this and bolt on. But before I do that, I need to wire it up so that I can eventually plug it into the controller. Okay, first things first, let's trim off the old wire. So we'll just keep the spade lugs to plug into the control board. Get rid of those old ones. Take a pair of wire strippers and strip these back so that we got something to crimp onto. Free up a little bit of wire there. A nice set of wire strippers. Then what we'll do is take these connections on the motor, and what I'll do is I will crimp something over this high-speed lead as well, just to make sure it's protected. And then I'll take these ground leads and screw them to the frame so that everything is grounded. All right. So let's get started with that. Okay, when I'm doing the crimping, these wire strippers, they also have a crimping area down here at the bottom, and they work okay. You just put your wire in there, put this in there, and crush down on it, and that works all right. But what I really like are these ratcheting terminal crimper kits. But these ratcheting crimpers, well, they just really work a lot better. And so you get you a ratcheting crimper tool. You put them in there and you just crimp down, and then just squeeze till it stops ratcheting. Then you got a good crimp. Comes with a multiple set of jaws. So I got this off of Amazon, and works like a champ. So this is probably it's in the 16 to it might be in the 20 gauge, 20 to 16 range. So it'll be these blue. I'll put it in this blue centerpiece. All right, that's looking pretty good. Then I'm going to take these two ground wires, screw those down, and then it'll be ready to install. All right, let's go ahead and mount the combustion blower. All right. If I can get my fingers to bite down. All right. That in. And this in. Just tighten this one by hand. Okay. All right. And there's the combustion motor. So now we got the two auger fans, the convection fans, the combustion fan. Now let's go ahead and put the controller back on. Okay, we'll get the controller installed. So things up. All right, so the next step is going to be to plug everything in and test it. Okay, we've got everything in, got it all plugged in. We'll go ahead and plug in the controller, and then we'll run it. All right, we shut it off. So the controller automatically left the auger on. I'm assuming to feed the last pellets and any burn. So basically it would clean from you notice the upper auger is not turning, so it's not dribbling any pellets. You'd spin the lower auger long enough to feed any remaining pellets out of the auger channel into the firebox. That way, if there was any burn, it would you'd clear the pellets forward. All right, so got the two convection blowers, lower auger, upper auger, and convection fan. Let's turn everything on low right now. Low blowers and low heat range. Let's turn it on. Okay, So the two augers started to come on, but I got it on the lowest heat range, so should be, you'll probably not feeding a lot of pellets. Now, doesn't look like that the convection fan is kicked on yet. Neither of those is turning. And doesn't look like we're turning the combustion fan either. So what do we think? Oh, and still not. First I'm going to turn up the blower fans. Okay, there you go. Whoa. So that's maximum convection. I don't ever run it that high, but they start to get a little rattly at first. Are they both turning? They are. Well, good. Okay, so the motors are turning. Let's see if I'm blowing it. Yep. On the left side. And the left side, they're blowing like crazy. Alright, so I'm getting a ton of air out of them. Way better than ever before. Guess that's what happens when you clean them. Okay, so I'm going to turn the blowers down. Okay, so that's nicer. Now, oh, it is actually turning the combustion fan. Boy, it's just so quiet. Can't even hardly hear it. Come inside to the front and, oh heck yeah. There's a ton of air coming through the end of the firebox. And that's at the lowest heat range. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn up the heat range, and it'll just start pushing pellets. I haven't got a fire running, but I expect it'll just start pushing pellets in there. And I expect it'll turn up the fan. So let me crank up the heat range. So that automatically kicked the blowers on too, the convection blowers. And so since I've got the heat range up, that means, you know, more pellets. Oh, whoops, my bad. That was the blower speed. That's why I turned the blower speed up. Now let me turn the heat range up. Okay, I'll leave the blowers down and the heat range up. All right, this is what I expect. I'll just crank it up to max. Okay, you can see the pellet feeder, the top auger was spinning. The lower auger's going like crazy, just trying to feed pellets in there. And let me go check and see if we're getting combustion air. I expect it will be, but holy smokes. Well, I'm guessing I don't really ever want to run that high. It's blowing air like a jet engine. So I'm a little suspicious that that's maybe a bigger blower than was on there before, combustion blower. I'm turning it down now. But, because there's a ton of air coming in there. I think you'd have a 4 going. Now I got to turn down and feel it. Yeah, that's quite a bit different, but there's still plenty of air coming in. You'd have a fire. Well, I expect it's going to work a whole bunch better this year. Okay, I just turned the heat off completely, and so it turned the upper auger, the dribbler, pellet dribbler off. So it shouldn't be feeding any more pellets in the lower auger. The lower auger's still spinning, pushing any remaining fire, any pellets in the auger out into the firebox. And then once this finishes its cycle, so I just want to watch it, make sure it shuts down properly. Then I'll unplug it, I'll finish dressing these wires, and we'll be done. Should be back in business just in time. The mornings are starting to cool off here in Colorado, so I'll be glad to have this fireplace back in business. Okay, I'm going to unplug this. Everything seemed to work. Unplug the stove, and I think I'll dress these wires a little bit. Take some zip ties and just clean this up a little, just so that I don't have wires flopping around all over the place. Maybe I'll use some colored ones to differentiate them from the ties that are there already. You know, it just makes things a little bit cleaner and makes them so they don't get, you know, jerked loose when you're cleaning back there with a vacuum cleaner or something like that. So keep things tied together, and I'll zip tie them to the frame right here. There's a hole. Looks like there used to be a back mounted to this. but you know, who knows where it is now. Never had this house before me. Looks like they maybe lost it. But I'll go ahead and zip tie that right there to string leaf those. Use these colored zip ties. And then, of course, I'll trim them up when I'm done. Get that tucked away in there. And trim these up. So it looks okay. It needs to be hidden when I get this back up against the wall. Looks like I could get a plate. Looks like there's a plate on here at one time, and who knows where that is. All right. There's that, and then I want to do something with these two. I mean, they look like they're okay, but I'd sure hate to get them tied up in the fans. So I may end up looking around a little bit for something to do there. The combustion fan, you know, it's sort of short enough that I don't think that's a problem. So it looks okay. The two auger wires, I got them zip tied, so they're pretty nice that way, but I just want to make sure that you have to keep an eye on them. The convection fans. And otherwise, everything looks pretty good. All right, I think I can turn this around, slide it up against the wall, and then I got to fix the vent stack. But I think we're done replacing that combustion blower. Thanks for watching.